Hello there, kia ora. I've been a little bit busy over the last couple of days, and the last two videos are all kind of pre-recorded, so it's given me a chance to do a little bit of a running catch-up to see what's been going on around the country, and oh boy, has there been a lot going on around the country. Like in Tauranga, for example, they're in the midst at the moment of their voting period, which finishes this Saturday for their local body elections. They haven't had one for a while, so it was kind of hoped that the voter turnout would be much higher. Instead, it's turning out to be much lower. Voter returns are tracking lower than the last three local body elections that were held there. And that's a real problem because these are the people that are going to be representing the city for the next 4 years. So they have a longer period of time to get across what it is that they want to get across. And there are some interesting candidates that are running. So if you haven't voted yet, it's still possible to do so, but you probably can't post your ballot back. You'd need to go to a drop-off point. And you can find those listed on the Tauranga City Council website. They're all there, super easy to track down. Get your vote in as soon as you can. On top of that, in Hamilton, the Kirikiriroa Māori Ward by-election voting period opened yesterday. If you're on the Māori electoral roll, you've got a chance to choose who your second local councillor is going to be to represent you around the table there. And there are some really fascinating, brilliant candidates. And Donna, the vaccine killed half my family, poor Kitty Phillips. She's number 2 on the Outdoors and Freedom Party lists, which should really tell you all that you need to know about how you should go out and get your vote in and make sure it's counted. Because when you have some less than ideal candidates who have a really dedicated voting base, they have a far better chance of getting elected than a lot of people realize. So yeah, for those two areas, please make sure that you're getting out and getting your votes done. In terms of national news though, well, it's also been a couple of days full of some interesting stuff. Don't forget, we were told when this election happened in October that the adults were now in charge, but the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister are out of the country and David Seymour's in charge. David Seymour, who seems to think that neither us or America were founded on violence. I mean, there was that whole revolution thing the Americans had. It wasn't a musical, despite what Lin-Manuel Miranda tried to tell people. It was pretty violent, and we have a history of violence here as well. You might remember a little thing called the Land Wars, unless you listen to the history curriculum that was being put forward by the current government, who just kind of downplay it, but want you to know about Henry VIII's wives instead. Yeah. Anyway, over the last couple of days, this government has gotten up to some interesting things. Like it was announced that Shane Jones had been organising off-the-record meetings with mining companies who wanted to be involved in the fast-track process that's currently in the committee area. It's a little concerning that a minister would have meetings off the record with people who want to lobby him. In fact, Claire Curran got fired from her role when she was in Labour because of her meetings with people while she was broadcasting minister. But there haven't been the same calls that we saw from David Seymour around firing Shane Jones for doing what seems to be very much the same thing on paper. And I mean, David Seymour's currently acting Prime Minister, so he could do it, I guess, technically, if he really, really wanted to. Now, there were also issues that cropped up with something called Korowai Manaki, which is a youth group training thing that's kind of what our boot camps are going to be modelled on. Remember the government saying they were going to model boot camps to be different than last time and that they're not going to get the same results? Well, it turned out that this particular group are having issues, like the fact that staff are smuggling in contraband and play fighting with youth offenders as recently as February this year. So that bodes really, really well, doesn't it, for the boot camps that are coming up. On top of that, there were issues around the Inter-Islander. You might remember the cancelled IREX ferry project that the government decided we didn't need before the ferries started throwing some real spanners in the works. Well, it turned out that Nicola Willis was told really specifically, be careful how you handle this. It could be an issue if you don't deal with the Koreans in a proper diplomatic way. The Koreans weren't told about it until the same time the rest of the public were told about it, which meant that nobody had any chance to brief them on what was going on, and that didn't really sit too well. On top of that, there's also issues with our hospital staff when it comes to both the Ministry of Health and the board that runs that, where there is now only 2 members because everybody else has quit, but also the fact that there's a hiring freeze for the Ministry of Health. And while we were told it wouldn't impact frontline staff, well, it turns out that it might actually be impacting frontline staff. That Doesn't bode well whatsoever. Oh, there were also issues with the cancellation of a number of contracts with Oranga Tamariki, which was described as shambolic and unprofessional, and it's left frontline workers completely in limbo as their funding's literally stopped. Like just completely frozen. Oh yeah, Louise Upson also announced that they're going to be chasing up young job seekers by phone because that's the one thing that's going to scare anybody under the age of 30, a call from an unknown number, and if they don't answer it, they don't get paid. The government won its police pay dispute, which is actually driving a whole bunch of police officers to look at quitting en masse and moving overseas to Australia, where they get paid far, far better. My God, it just seems to pile up, doesn't it? Every other bloody day, there seems to be something else. And finally, Simeon Brown has told people that they need to slow down on busy main roads out there in the wild as opposed to speeding up in front of schools. Because of course they did. Now his argument was obviously around safety because it's, there's some dangerous driving out there on country roads and speed cameras that have been set up there. He announced that they're going to be putting signs up for speed cameras so that people are kind of warned in advance because they don't want to use it as a tax gathering, revenue increasing exercise. They basically want to keep people safe, and keeping people safe is not a bad thing. But it does kind of give the impression that you can do whatever speeds you want as long as there are no signs around. And, that includes outside of schools where he wants to increase speeds, which also research from the Herald yesterday showed people don't want that. But hey, research. Again, why would this government follow it? So it just goes to show you that when the adults are in charge and the adults aren't there in the room where it happens, our government does seem to feel like a bit of a circus. And the clowns definitely look like the other ones in charge.